What are you searching for? And have you found it? Do you have something strong inside your soul that's going to be there when things get tough and rough? Have you discovered the answer to your problems is not in here, rather up there? The treasure in earthen vessels is the very light of God shining into our lives. Have you made that treasure your own? When the going gets tough, are you willing to put your heart and your hands and your lives in the very hand of the one who created you, so that he can sustain you and pull you through? Where is your faith? There's a story that I read this week that a graduate student was giving an object lesson, and as she brought forward her object lesson, it was in this bag. And she brought it forward and set it there and said, now I'm just about ready to show you this object. And there was someone who was walking through the forest and found one of these objects and had no clue what it was used for, but discovered very quickly that the bowl on the end was good for drinking water out of, and so he used it as a dipper and drank water and was so refreshed until it rotted away. And after it rotted away, he took the stick that was left and stuck it into the ground, and the strings allowed plants, beans to grow up in it. It became this sturdy thing for the beans to grow, and he enjoyed a garden that summer. But it rotted away too. And soon all he was left with was this wood, and so he used it to build a fire and warm himself one cool fall evening. A day not too long after he had done that, he was walking in the forest again and noticed a young girl carrying a similar object. And he said to her, I'll bet you can't find as many uses for that thing as I found. And she simply picked up this African guitar and began to play a beautiful melody. You see, it was created to make beautiful music, and he had no imagination to know that that is what it was created for. How many of us have taken our lives, which were created by God for a special purpose, and tried to find our own purposes for life? We've looked everywhere for our living and our purposes in living, and we start doing this and we do that, and pretty soon our life has deteriorated, and we haven't done that for which God created us. God created each of us to make beautiful music together in our own way. God created us to be in His presence and to show His glory with those who are around us. Male and female, He created us so that we might become that which will live in and through Him. There's a poem by Myra Brooks Welch that reads, "'Twas battered and scarred, and the auctioneer thought it scarcely worth his while to waste much time on the old violin. But he held it up with a smile. 'What am I bidding, good folks?' he cried. 'Who'll start the bidding for me? $1, then $2, only $2, now $3. $3 once, $3 twice, going for $3. But no. From the room far back, a gray-haired man came forward and picked up the bow. Then wiping the dust from the old violin and tightening the loose strings, he played a melody pure and sweet as caroling angel sings. The music ceased, and the auctioneer, with a voice that was quiet and low, said, "What am I bid for the old violin?" And he held it up with the bow. $1,000, who'll make it 2? 2,000, who'll make it 3? 3,000 once, 3,000 twice, going and gone, said he. The people cheered, but some of them cried, we do not quite understand what changed its worth. Swift came the reply, the touch of a master's hand. And many a man with life out of tune, and battered and scarred with sin, is auctioned cheap to the thoughtless crowd, much like the old violin. A mess of pottage, a glass of wine, a game, and he travels on. He is going once, going twice. He's going and almost gone. But the master comes, and the foolish crowd never can quite understand the worth of the soul and the change that's wrought by the touch of our master's hand. We are told by Paul that the message that is preached as the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing. To those who have never experienced the touch of our Master's hand, it becomes foolishness. And we're blinded to what's going on in the Christian faith. And many are blinded by many different gods out there. Recently, I've been watching a lot of the news, and the god that seems most prevalent, that blinds most of us, is that god of money. The god of economics. Over in Spain, everybody's worried and wanting to bail out Spain, along with the bailing out of several other places that have already been bailed out. And we're all concerned because all of our economies seem to be intertwined with one another, and if one falls, we'll all fall. And everybody's worried about this falling economy, and so we concentrate on that instead of on what's really important, and that's God and one another. And those who are outside the Christian faith really are perishing and are worried and are frustrated, and they know nothing else, and they get lost in all of this. But hopefully those of us who call ourselves by the name of Christ Christian understand that there's much more to life and to living than our finances. Hopefully we realize that the touch of the Master's hand comes into our lives and turns our lives into this beautiful instrument that can make wonderful music. Like the old violin. Like the African guitar. We are created to make music before our God. We are created in the image of God. And we're recreated in the image of Jesus Christ. The old is gone, and the new comes. And God bless us dearly as we realize that in the midst of persecution and despair, God is there. One last story. Back in 1994, Palm Sunday, there was a congregation of the Goshen United Methodist Church in Alabama, Piedmont, Alabama. Some of you will remember very vividly the story I'm about to tell. For on the day of Palm Sunday at Goshen Church, as people were gathering together to sing praises and to wave palm branches, outside a storm was brewing, and in the clouds came this horrific tornado that came down out of the clouds and swept over the church, wiping out the church, and the people that were there were scattered. There were 20 people killed inside that congregation that day. One of the 20 was a 4-year-old girl who was the daughter of the pastor and her husband, who was also a pastor. In the midst of that tragedy, in a couple of weeks, as the story that I read this week is told, they gathered together on the grounds where the church was destroyed, and they built a new altar, and they were worshiping God at this new altar. And a 3-year-old girl whose older sister, who was 4, was killed in that horrific event was carrying a shovel full of dirt and placing it near to where that new altar was, along with many others in the church who took the ground from where the old building was and piled it near the altar where the new building was going to be built, and then they gathered together and they turned new dirt over into the old so that they would be breaking ground for their new building. And as they were doing this with the bishop present and announcing and pronouncing that there is still hope, that out of the ashes will rise once again a vibrant congregation. And that vibrant congregation was going to continue to be led by this pastor and her husband who had lost much. To those who are outside the faith, they find this kind of a hard thing to understand. But to those who understand that faith in Jesus Christ is the most important, understand also that we might be persecuted, but we're not abandoned. We might be struck down, but we're not destroyed. We might not understand why things happen in our lives, but we do understand that we have a God who remains with us always. And so out of the rubble and out of the despair comes great hope. Hope that can only be had and found by a faith in Jesus Christ. Many of us have gone through horrific things. We've had events in our lives that have crushed us. Hopefully you can stand as a child of God and say boldly, I'm not destroyed. I'm created in the image of my Savior. And therefore, not only do I have hope, I'm able to offer hope to you. As we begin celebration